Hey, how's it going? So this is like the millionth time I've tried to do this, actually five. But I'm going to talk today about Rumble, which is a Netflix rockumentary that came out in 2017. And I just came across it for some reason now, and I just want to talk a little bit about the documentary itself. I listed the native people that I feel feature and the people that are influenced by the culture in blue there. And so it starts off like talking about Link Ray because the title, Rumble, is the title of one of his probably most famous songs. And Rumble is like one of those songs that you learn how to play early on as a guitar player, like I used to be until I got sick and can't really do it anymore. But, it's like right up there with Smoke on the Water and Louie Louie. Because the chord progression, if you figure it out, that's pretty easy. And, even the rhythmic chord, like power points, not really leads, but those are, if you're brave, not that difficult to figure out, I guess. And I really had no idea the influence of indigenous culture on music. I should have figured it out, though, because it's kind of all right there. And they talk about kind of the intersection between indigenous people and like the Africans, like runaway slaves or just slaves, and how they kind of were by fate brought together in like a really evil way by people that wanted to sort of smash the culture and power of the indigenous people, and also like they figured if they took their men away where they couldn't find their women again and move in with these Africans, and well, that's, they were considered breeding stock, the indigenous and the black people, because they just wanted, they being, the colonizers, slave owners, settlers from Europe, want bodies to work the land, and they don't want to pay anything, and they want to use them in every possible way physically. Yeah, every way you can think about that. That's what I mean. So there are lots of people that, well, there was a few. I don't know about lots, but I know in like Metallica and Ozzy Osbourne's groups that you have Robert Trujillo and Randy Castillo and Mike Inez. I can't remember who he played with. I should know. I'm sorry, I don't. You can look it up, as I will be doing later, because now I'm red-faced, not just from the heat. So, there's like the rock influence, and I wasn't even really aware of, I just assumed by those names that they were Latino, and maybe they partially are, because it seems like everything about the natives and the southern natives are like a melange of just everything. Like, I got a whole mess of stuff too. But one of them is Choctaw. And so I learned a lot more about like the part that those people played, and how like Ozzy Osbourne, I guess, really a lot appreciates like Latino and indigenous people for their like good musical ability and like great rhythm. And he himself, they only showed like performing. He didn't actually speak the words, but I think his bass player, or maybe he had to be the bass player, because I kind of know like all of the guitar players, and he wasn't one. Or who knows? He did something in the band, the British guy, and he was really good friends with Randy Castillo. And he related the fact that Ozzy, you could see how well these people and their abilities would mesh with what he was doing, and he was right. But I didn't know those people were indigenous. You probably wouldn't know that I have any part of that in my background by looking at me. But another part that I really loved was when they started talking about Mardi Gras and they went to New Orleans, because that is where my people are from. Is my paternal grandmother, who it was the Choctaw with my great grandmother, and she was from northern Louisiana. I'm not sure if it was New Orleans proper, but I'm sure it was like in the vicinity. Well, I'm not sure of anything. It was in northern Louisiana, so it could have been New Orleans. I don't know, maybe not. And then there was on my mom's side, I just ran across these pictures that a indigenous tribal researcher guy, that's Tano, and I'm just going to write down his name because I am just not sure how to pronounce the last name, but looking through some stuff that he had on his YouTube channel about northern Louisiana, and like it's all about Indian tribes, there was a band of Chickasaw, and it was really old. Like, it was so old that people were like, they're standing in a grove of Spanish moss trees, but they're blending in with the trees, and it's probably because their clothes were essentially bark. So, old picture. They didn't get, like, white clothes yet and stuff like that. So, at the front of this band, though, is a woman, like, totally looked like my mom. Like, it's crazy. So, here's the dude's name, the researcher. Curimeo, whoops, I'm doing this bad. Curimeo Ahau, I don't know how to pronounce that last name there, but it's Ahau, and you should check him out on YouTube. He's just a font of information. So that was, like, interesting to find out. But in the documentary, they just went to Mardi Gras. And I've never been to that, like either the bead throwing or the parade thing with the big chief and all the Choctaw and probably Chickasaw and whatever else was in the area, like native tribes that blended with the Creole black people and native people in the area and the French and the Italians, like whatever was there, everybody got all mixed up. And I liked it because a lot of the people, the natives in there, look like people like in my family. Not so much me. I didn't see that many people that look like me too much, but just relatives like uncles and cousins and things. Because all different, we have like a million different colors, like, so. And when I was there as a child, it was like they talk about black people that go to Africa, and they're like, yeah, everybody was black. It was really cool. That's what New Orleans was kind of like, because we were in like Frenchtown or whatever. But anyway, I had seen the Mardi Gras parades, and like the chief guy is like at the front, and he's like the master of ceremonies, pretty much. And I always thought, well, that's a lot of feathers and beads they're wearing, like Indians. Like, I didn't put it together, but I was young. You'll have to excuse me. And there was a couple of other things, like Peter Lafarge. He was a folk singer, and he was obviously a huge influence on Johnny Cash, because I had never heard of him until I saw this. And if you ever hear Peter Lafarge in here, you're going to know exactly where Johnny Cash is coming from. So that leads me to this other guy, Bill Miller. I believe they say he's Mohican, but he's a musician, and you can find him on YouTube. He does some interesting stuff. I take a look if you're curious. And he related a story. It's a very short part of the movie, and he's talking about going to do a radio interview with a DJ in the studio. So Johnny Cash at the same time is trying to get his record label to release this album he made called Bitter Tears, and it was like a folk/protest album, and he was another highly inspired by Peter Lafarge endeavor. But the DJ wouldn't play it, and the record company wasn't promoting it. And in fact, they were like, I guess, paying. This is in the documentary, but they were paying DJs like to not play it, and so Bill Miller, excuse me, goes in there and, presumably he's promoting something of his own, but he asks the DJ why he's not playing Bitter Tears. And the guy's reaction was so guilty conscience. He was all, I didn't like mess up your land, mess up your life and take away your land. Like, your life's not crap because of me. And that's like almost verbatim, I guess, what the guy said. And Bill Miller's like, hey, nobody said anything, man. Whoa. It's like, yeah, they know it all stinks, and they know, like, the sources of the root of the problems that came later. But all this time, now, they're not, like, studying on it, They're not dwelling on it. And I just thought that was interesting because I feel like we have right now going on in society, this is like completely outside the documentary on this side of the screen, and there's like racially motivated killings, and they're just going after like the LGBT community like umbrella, and it's a lot of like kind of bad feelings, like hate, and violence isn't really like fun either. But I think it's a symptom of a guilty conscience, and they're like lashing out because they are probably finally going to be right about the country changing its tone. Like, sorry, but it's happening. And that's, shaking their foundations. It's messing them up. And don't a lot of people who like are guilty and angry but don't want to admit it often become angry and like deflect right back at you and get angry at you, or like get you first before they can get you? Bottom line is that there's been a lot of like people benefiting from the things that they're benefiting from the spoils of the lives they've spoiled, I guess, over the hundreds of years. And we, women, people of color, LGBTQ, whatever it is, are like tired of like, waiting to be approved to do things. It's like, you're making it different. We're still people. We still popped out of the same kind of birth canal, and we got all the same organs, and we bleed and poop and breathe. It's like we're heckling over silly little differences, and it's not even about that. And so I think that a lot of people are feeling it, and that's how it's coming out. I just thought it was interesting that it was in there because it's not a new thought of mine. So let me just check my notes real quick. I want to finish up before I run out of time. Oh, Charlie Patton, I guess a Choctaw man from like Mississippi, and they talk about what a huge influence he was on guitar players. I never even heard of him. And there's one point where Joy Harjo is sitting listening to Charlie Patton on the Victrola, and she's so cute. She's kind of like jingle dancing in her chair a little bit and like singing along with these vocalizations. And I thought, well, if they mentioned that Jimmy Page knew who he was for sure. And if Jimmy Page knew who Charlie Patton was, which I didn't until I saw this movie, then definitely Robert Plant did. And over the years, I've thought many times, like, Robert Plant sounds kind of like Indian singing, because he does a lot of like, if you heard Led Zeppelin, So, I mean, the influences are just everywhere. And they're hard to miss, and it's like surprising. And I want to close up by saying that I started searching my own background. Like, I'm lazy, so I've been doing it since like 2015, 2016, very sporadically. And seriously, come on, brain, kick in. I started studying. So it was like this documentary, and then I happened to speak to a friend of mine who I didn't even really know like what his background was, is like Cherokee, I guess, and I'm not sure what else. Like several things. He's got a French name, and we were talking about, like, he's like, oh, you're gonna watch this movie you're talking about, and he like recommended Real Indians, and I think I'd actually already seen it, but then he starts talking about how many people we both know, like I was saying, like we were both from the punk rock scene, so many of them there. In fact, I had a single come out called it was an EP, and my band was called Mad Society. It came out in 1981, and on the back side of it, of the cover, there's a picture of our singer, and we're in like a dressing room, and he wore like war paint and a breech clout cover, like the little flap thing, like, Hollywood Indian look, whatever. But there was somebody outside, a friend of ours, wanting to come in or looking in when the photographer took the picture of Steven, our singer. And this girl was outside, like, looking in, and she's got on so much makeup that, like, unless you're looking for it, you might not notice that she was native. But if you see her without, like, spiderweb makeup going up the side of her face, you see this girl is an Indian. And my friend, the French guy, pointed out, like, we know so many, indigenous people, like, and just naming off all these people. I'm like, oh yeah, and that's what I've been, like, kind of coming to the awareness of on my own, like, best friend and roommate for years, and I knew that she was partially Indian, like half or whatever, and went to powwows and that, and I've had my own strange experience with powwows. I've never been, but I just watched my first one on YouTube and just was like, my body was involuntarily crying. It was very strange. Also happened, I've watched Rumble now 4 times, and including this afternoon, and it still had me like sniffing and breath, air catching when I'm trying to breathe. It is intense, and it's so good. It's so informative, and I can't say any more good things about it. Or I probably could, but I'm running out of time. So just make sure I got all of my little things set. I think I gave it. Like, I'll probably forget something, because that's like the law when I do these things. But anyway, that about covers it. Thank you and good night.